Hey, Karen Alari here. I just wanted to do a real quick video today talking about values. A number of you have been asking me for a little more information on what I mean by values when I'm talking about the paintings. So here's a little photo I took a while back, and I think it's a good example of how values work in a painting and how you create distance in a painting by using your values. And what do I mean by values? Well, let's take as an example um, let's take a color here and look at this little value scale here, and that's really what this is. Down here we have black, and up here we have white, and this range between white and black, that's your value scale. Okay, so when you go more into the distance, your values are going to get lighter as you go into the distance, and they also get bluer. When you look at it on the screen like this, you can really see how blue this area is and how light it is compared to this area, and how much bluer and lighter this area is than this area. And then when you come up into the foreground here, it's the colors are more chromatic and the darks are darker. Okay, so when you get started with your painting and you're looking at your picture and you're trying to identify where am I going to start on this, the first thing you want to look at is the large shapes, and then you can see what the different values are between those large shapes. And by that I mean this. Here I've just drawn in around the large shapes. If you squint your eyes, squinting your eyes is so important in painting. You want to squint your eyes so you can see, get rid of all that detail. That's what squinting will do for you. Get rid of the detail and see where areas just blend together and one area is the same as the other area. When you squint your eyes, this whole area is just one value. This whole area is just one value. This whole area is one value with a couple of bright spots where you come into the more closer to you. You get a little more brightness in here. This whole area is one value. And if you start your painting that way and nail those relative values, then you can come back and put detail in and change the colors from one color to another, but you want to stay in that same value. You never want to put a dark shape back here that you might see in shadow. You never want that dark to be as dark as the dark shapes you see further forward, if you see what I mean. So here's a way to look at these values by using this Photoshop program. First of all, let's go back here and choose this color. This color that I just chose is just basically white. It's a very, very light color. Okay, so that's the lightest color out here. Now let's compare that to this. Okay, you see that's also a very light color, but it's a little more orange. Interesting, huh? Because it's got some sunlight on it. So now let's look at this area. Look how blue that is. That's so important when you're doing your paintings. I know a lot of you, when I'm doing the critiques, the one thing that I'm always saying is your mountains are bluer. They're much bluer than you think they are in the distance there. Now let's go into this area here. Do you see how much darker that is, but it's still very, very gray? You have to keep all these colors that you're putting in right here in this same value range. Do you see, as in terms between light to dark, it's this mid value range here, and all these colors that are back here are right in a very tight value range. And if you keep them all close together like that, then they're going to all read as being in this same plane in your painting. When you come in here to these colors, now you can see the values jumping around a lot more. Okay, you're further in the foreground, so your lights are going to be lighter and your darks are going to be darker. When you get clear up here, see how chromatic that color is? This area over here is the most pure pigment, the most chromatic. And as you move forward in your painting, your colors are going to get more chromatic. So if I look at these trees right here, okay, these are in the foreground, and they're clear over here towards the more chromatic side of your scale. These same kind of trees are back here in the background. But see what happens? It's the same tree, but now it's much grayer and much lighter because it's further in the distance. Do you see that? Towards the light side and towards the gray side, whereas that same tree up here is much more chromatic than it is in the background. It's even a little bit, lighter. You've got more lights and more darks in here than you do in the background. If I look at my darkest dark areas, look how dark that is in the foreground. Now, if I go back here, which is the same kind of shadowed area, see how much lighter that dark is? You're never going to have anything as dark as this back in this area. Everything's going to be lighter. And everything's going back here is going to be even lighter yet. You see that? You're also going to have, see how dark this color is in here and how chromatic it is? See how far over towards the chromatic side of the scale it is? So that's why values are so important in your painting, is to understand this range from the distance up into the foreground, and you're going to be lighter and bluer, lighter and grayer in the distance, and gradually moving forward in your painting. And that's going to create your sense of your painting receding into the distance. So, even though okay, this is the same kind of bush as this, and that's the same one as that, and it's the same one as that, when it's in the distance, it's going to be a different color. And if you want to give the illusion of distance, you have to keep that in mind. The darks are lighter, the lights are darker. There's less contrast as you move back into your painting. So I hope that helped a little bit. I don't want to go and belabor the point, but I just wanted you to see that how important those relative values are in setting up yourself for a successful painting. And if you train your eye to look at the big shapes and ignore the detail at first and just get down those big shapes, then you'll be able to be more successful as your painting goes on. So what you can do once you understand that is now go to the next stage in your painting, which is the block-in. And I'm just going to demonstrate it here in Photoshop. Obviously, you'd be doing this with your paints. But if you choose these large shapes that you've outlined, this would have been your drawing stage, and now we move to the block-in stage. We're basically just looking at these overall colors in this shape and filling those areas in with that overall color. And that establishes very clearly what your values are in these areas without getting confused in the detail early on in your painting. And that's the purpose of doing the block-in after you've identified your large shapes, and then you start blocking in with the big basic values in the approximate color that you're working on. So this is just kind of a simple way to illustrate that, but you can see how, these are the same trees here, but as you come forward, they're going to get darker or lighter. They're going to have more contrast and more color as you move forward. I think this is a really fun tool to use to start training your eye to look at that a little bit more. So basically that's what you would do, is go through your painting, identify how this was a lighter browner color, and these trees back here are lighter as they go back into the distance until you get to these, which are very, very blue. So that's kind of in a nutshell the concept behind the block-in. And then you can come in and put your detail on top of that, but you have a real clear idea of what your value scale is, and that helps you keep your painting looking more realistic. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope it helps you a little bit start thinking about values when you first start your painting and as you finish it as well. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you guys soon.